Hi there everyone, Alchemist Lion here, and I'm just getting down with my old self. I'm here in my very first Stonewood SSD builds, and this account I haven't actually used in a bit, but um, it's very interesting for the fact that this is all set up pre-change where before when you ran SSDs, anytime you threw a build down, that build was basically semi-permanent. If you broke it, you didn't get the materials back. In addition to that, um, anytime a husk would damage it, that damage stayed. So you'll notice it doesn't look damaged anymore, but the health bar is low. It also used to be that your durability would just constantly run down until the traps ran out, and they never got that refresh. Epic has since put an update in recently, even because this up about a month and a half ago was still showing the durability uses, but now the durabilities are reset to full. But you'll notice that this wall shows half health, but it actually looks fully charged. The other thing is you would be having to build on the fly. So while the mission was going, you would build, and those builds would save. So you can see here some spam builds that I was doing that ended up just staying. And these were during a fight, so you can see that they were worn down, and I was basically just trying to stop them, if I remember properly, from trying to get through and break into the amp, which is basically right here. And so you would just be spamming builds constantly. So I want to show basically where I started. A lot of people think that, you know, you're just really good. You just are, I guess, innately good at building. But no, it takes a lot of learning and a lot of work to get to the spot of being able to build properly, especially if you don't take notes, don't watch any videos, and really don't learn from anything other than your own mistakes. And that's kind of where I started from. So this is my humble beginnings. This is where I started. You'll notice I did not take away a lot of the builds from even the directions that they were coming from at the start. So I'd place this amp down, and then they would no longer come this way, but I just left all the builds up. I didn't really take away much because, again, resources were so scarce that I had it in my head that breaking this would be a crime because that's such a waste of brick. I wouldn't get this brick back in the day. But I do want to break these and maybe even look at redoing, because Endurance was not run on these. These only ran SSD 10, and there was a lot of fighting involved. They're not the greatest builds, so this isn't a brag on builds. I've already recorded this once or twice, and it's just too long. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to show you where I started because it's very humble. I was very, very, very inept at building when I started this game. Even though I'm not that much better now, I'm a lot better than this. So yeah, I'll just kind of show a few of these amps just to kind of see, but you'll notice just random builds, a lot of low walls, and my whole strategy in this and Plankerton was to basically heavily fortify the amp and put a lot of like half walls everywhere else to try to stop them, which isn't practical. You change their pathing, they find ways around, they break everywhere, and there's just chaos. When you overbuild like this, that's the best word I can describe, is your end result is just utter chaos. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of take a look and hop around here. We'll hop around Plankerton, and then I'll show you Twine. Twine is probably my most transitioned amp, just because I did a lot of that at the start of playing this new account, my Alchemist Lion account. But when I was on Jay's account, this is how I started. And as I said, a lot of lower walls. You'll see spots where they were trying to break through will have like a lower health. And I mean, a lot of this was just kind of built on the fly too. So it's really hard to remember where, but yeah, you'll see that this one was broken through. So they were trying to smash through this part here. I'm assuming they broke through one of the many numerous spots around here, and I was just trying to repair build as it was going along. With a lot of just miscellaneous traps too. Like, there's no consistency because I was just using what I was afforded at the time, and not even crafting traps, usually just what traps that I found even. Defender pads, I don't even use defenders. I probably should, but I had defender pads just thrown everywhere, and I think I just thought they were so useless, is what I kind of am scarred now with, and I don't use them anymore. This account has no defenders at all, aside from Val, I guess now. But yeah, this build. Like, see, I have everything blocked off. So basically, what ends up happening is they try to path other ways, and they find other areas to break through. You'll notice here, this wall, this is where they got in and broke in. Not a normal pathing. Yeah, they were breaking through here because they were basically going all the way around, breaking through here, and then going this way, versus coming their natural path because I had all this barricaded this way, and that side not so much. So a lot of like just not knowing how Husk's path is really what was going on here. Like all this, like everything where they would naturally want to come up here because this is all barricaded. What did they do? They walked over here and then just smashed through up here. You can see the half build, then everything's all torn apart, and you'll notice that that's basically another way that they came up, and then they would start trying to break through here. So lots of just randomness to this whole build. Like random wall launcher that pushes them into a dart? Meh. But it's fun to look back and just kind of go quickly through. You'll see a lot of spots because this was basically right after SSD 10. Didn't do anything after that. Endurance didn't exist. There was no reason to come back. So you didn't have a lot of motivation to make it perfect. You basically just, threw up what you could, made it work, and went on to the next. Yeah, this is fully open because they were probably beating on this like crazy to end my attempts at SSD 10, but yeah, somehow even with these builds I managed to pull it through. But yeah, you'll notice like this is almost broken, this is all worn out, probably because they were trying to get up here and smash through this. Yeah, it's just a mess. They probably broke right up through here and just went straight through here. Yeah, this was not well structured at all. But it is going to be fun to kind of go back. I don't have these amp setups that I have on my current account, the Alchemist Line account. I don't have these setups, so I want to go back and do some of these endurances with the new setups, or not new setups, but my older setups, especially in Plankerton. I'm just going to kind of go through because you just see it's really there was nothing from between spawn and the actual amp. Everything was just heavily build the amp and then barricade all around it and try to like fortify it with whatever random trap I had. That was the strategy for me. That was my really bad strategy. And you'll notice a lot of these amps are pretty exposed because that strategy is not very effective. But you kind of get conditioned, or you kind of get shown that that's what you got to do to start with. So it's kind of a little misleading, and that's kind of tying into what I want to do here. I really want to, take a look, especially where I have a third account being built now. I really want to take that third account and utilize it to show people how to do builds, especially when they're starting out or fairly new, how I would do and navigate the builds in Storm Shields as well as in Endurance using lower traps and, lower stats that my kid will have. So I'm showing you kind of where I started. You kind of already know where I'm at. And then I'll kind of show people kind of how to get there along the way, because a lot of my videos currently right now are more on the end once you already have those high stats, or kind of just showing what you can do once you have a little bit of variety and flexibility with hero loadouts, weapons, and trapping. So it's nice to see what you can do with some restrictions, and that's what my next kind of little mini series is going to be about. But yeah, this is Stonewood. We are grooving here in Plankerton now, and I'm just going to leave my other self to dance to his heart's content, and I'm just going to show you a quick little tour here of Plankerton. A little more elevated than Stonewood, but not too far different. The main thing is I did a lot more ramps and stuff to connect, so that mobility was less of an issue. I found when I was playing, people didn't really have mobility weapons, especially in Plankerton, nor did they really know how to get it around too well with the heroes. So you really had to kind of basically spoon feed them around the map, even if you had help at all. But at this stage, this is kind of what I had set up. Again, very heavily fortified amps with random half walls and a lot of miscellaneous traps scattered about. That was the strategy, I guess you would say. Like, look, pyramid inside of a box, surrounded by floor traps and half walls. And then I just put some wall darts kind of surrounding the whole thing. Not the most effective, but yeah, it's kind of how I made it work. And you'll notice that there is damage throughout where they were hitting. I really wish the durability would show. That would have been cool to kind of be able to go back and see. You can see the startings of me thinking about tunneling. But even then, very limited. I mean, you get a few ceiling traps, and that's basically it. It was more about the fortification of the actual amp, and very poorly, I must say. But it's how I had it work. The main reason I'm actually excited about this Plankerton is the amp placement. I don't know many amp or home bases that have this sort of setup where both of these southwest amps are set up like this. And I have none of the northwest amps. I don't have this one, which pretty sure is almost like mandatory. And I definitely don't have this one over here. But yeah, it's a different sort of setup. I'm not even sure if it's possible, but I really want to run this now where they're so close together. I think there would be some cool pathing as well. I'm interested to see what war games will throw at me, if it's going to put me in a different amp, if it's still going to be C related, or if some will come over here, because that would be really cool to see. I've not tested anything war games related on this yet, just because it never really existed, and we were more focused when I did start back up on getting Twine complete so we can do the endurance on my Alchemist Line account. But yeah, this is basically it. Again, the heavy fortification, the lower walls, it's pretty much a staple. You'll notice that I took the picture of what Epic wanted you to do with builds, and I really took that to heart with putting spikes all over the place, even on like the higher elevations. Sure, husks came up here and they started breaking, but they would literally break 360 around. They would go up on the whole pyramid thing and go kind of anywhere and everywhere and try to break through. And these spikes aren't really effective when they're doing that. So you'll notice a lot of this side is all torn apart and half broken, because this is pretty much, they would come up here, go through my very rudimentary tunnel here, which is probably really ill built, and just start going ham on my actual amp all over the place. But I still managed to pull it through. It's just, yeah, this is where I started. And again, anytime there was a cross or a spawn that stopped being a spawn, I just kept the builds there because I had no clue. And plus, I didn't want to lose any of the material, anything like that I placed. I figured it was just going to sit there. I didn't really think about structure limits too much or anything like that. It was mostly just about, getting my builds down and passing through the missions, because there was no longevity to these. Once you got SSD 10 done, there was no real reason aside from trading to ever go back to these. That's why I really like endurance, and I think a lot of endgame players do too, is because it's something that you have that's almost like a permanence thing. And I wish there was more of that in this game. It's really cool at this stage that we have that. But yeah, this is in quickness my amp designs. Very bad. It's pretty much the same all around. It's just random traps. Like, these traps have no rhyme or reason to them. Like 77 to a 5, like side by side. Like there's no like defender pads randomly placed. I had no knowledge of how defender pads really work, and even now I don't utilize them like I probably should. But this is probably the start of me not liking them too much, because I just had no clue what to do with them. I really took no knowledge or learning from anything other than what I found out in public, which public matches aren't always the greatest for strategy, as well as just my own what was working and what wasn't working. And my whole thing was just to fight through everything. I didn't think about AFKing or using the traps to their maximum benefit. I was really just spamming stuff and trying to beat the level. Yeah, you'll see all these beatdowns. Like, this was probably all very much blocked off and just randomly trapped. But they beat through it while I was doing the SSD 10 here. And I mean, they probably definitely broke through this at one point, and I had to repair that and throw a wall down fast. Because that was another thing. You basically built on the fly a lot when you were doing this, because things saved. So the whole thing would be to start the Storm Shield and try to catch them as they're pathing and just throw down whatever traps you had. That was my strategy, at least. really probably bad, but when you don't know, you don't know. This is just, I can't even look at this. This is just like probably the worst tunnel system ever. Fire traps and wall launchers. Ending with everything being blocked off. So almost making it all redundant. Yeah, and everything's just completely blocked off. So really, like I said before, that whole chaos thing where you put builds everywhere, it's chaos. Utter chaos. Husks would literally come from like 5 to 6 different directions, just because of all the different block offs and things in their way. They would go far and wide to find ways around it, and I just found it so difficult to keep up. The barricade system definitely does not work, and I'm not sure why there's not a lot more to show just, how to trap effectively, which is why the community is so great. And a lot of my builds are, like I said before, set for people with higher stats and durability. So we're really going to take a look in the newer series here with having lower stats and lower durabilities and still making it work. But yeah, this is Plankerton. I'm not going to spend too much time in here left. It is what it is. Some cool potential, though, to it. And really just wanting to show, like, we all start somewhere. And this is how I started. We're living large here in Twine now, and this is my kind of transition. I started this kind of already into this Alchemist line account a bit, because I got to SSD 6, I finished that one, and I was on 7 when I stopped playing on the J account. And going back, because we were wanting to get the endurances done, and in order to do that, we needed to finish the SSDs. So I came through and I added in some things, but I still wasn't at the level I'm at currently, and there's still a lot of the older setups still in here. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. I re-recorded this probably a third time, basically, because I was going too long, and there's only so much you can really do and show when it's saying, like, don't do these builds. But essentially, I'm just wanting to show where I started from. So I'm going to do my best to kind of go through these really quickly. I've kind of said what I needed to say for the most part. You'll notice in a lot of this, I am more into the tunneling now, but I do a lot of the floor freeze and gas trap kind of combinations, as well as I was very heavily into broadsides when I started this. So a lot of it is going to be basically set up that. I was starting to do more tunneling. You'll notice that fireballs are landing in spots way different than when I did this. A lot of the spawns also have shifted since then. So a lot of this very much needs to be refined. I'm going to probably use this to play with a few things. But yeah, like you see, like very heavily on the broadsides and gas traps. If we go to Devil, I do a lot of like basic amp builds still here, where I kind of fortify the amp and then just kind of circle it with some damage, and then really just try to kind of hit them with anything else along the way. Nothing is oriented properly. Some of this is kind of a nightmare to go back and see. Wide open spaces. I have a feeling some of that's to do with the lava bombs kind of reshifting, but yeah, wide open areas and broadsides just doing nothing really. Things like that. But kind of the starting of kind of where I'm at now, which is why it's kind of good to see that, things progress along the way. I mean, block off, that's not even upgraded. I don't even know what to say about this. Surprisingly, a large number of husks still went this path, but yeah, they like to break that. No lies. But yeah, see, even in here, very heavy on the gas straps, freeze straps. I use dynamos here, but then broadsides where there's no bouncing. Yeah, not the best strategies in play here, but kind of still on that cusp of learning some of the intricate details of the traps. Bridge was very interesting. This was kind of the start of me doing really good in endurance, and it's running with builds like this. I ended up making a bit more tanky in my Alchemist Lion build, but this is how I started. And then what I've done is, as I learned to open things up more, I basically inverted this. So everywhere there isn't a build, now there is, and everywhere there is a build, now there isn't. And yeah, both styles worked. This was way post or pre-nerf and things like that, but just kind of interesting to see what kind of things I was coming up with. And again, here's an area where I built. You'll notice my lettering. Bridge is actually very low in the letters, relatively speaking. This is my F. In comparison, my pit was I. So I never actually had pit get hit on SSDs until the very end. It was bridge that kind of took its place and was getting hit more so. So I had bridge getting hit on my SSDs, and they liked to come from this hill direction at one stage, and I just kind of kept it. Even though I placed the amp, I never really deleted it. At that stage, they were replacing the stuff when I built this, but I just didn't really know, didn't really think, and I was just keeping it just in case. But yeah, lots of unnecessarities in this that I want to get rid of. This was interesting. This is probably the most recent build. That's why I'm kind of just going to show it. This is kind of the closest thing that I have to what I do currently. But again, I'm very still boosting up the amp here. I have it very heavily guarded. This is me trying to get into the creative aspect of building my first kind of like castle build. And then just kind of having tunnels and trying to barricade. Of course, didn't get hit in an SSD, and probably wouldn't pass an endurance test, but cool to see. Again, heavy on gas, heavy on freeze, heavy on broadsides. That was kind of what I was doing at this time. And then the same thing on this side, only for some reason I decided to not put any roof here. I'm not quite sure what my thought process is. One gas strap's enough, but yeah. And again, orientation, I just kind of threw them down. I had no clue. Yeah. And then all this is barricaded, so when they walk up, this is kind of where they ramp up. Of course, now I know they'd be coming over here, but yeah, I just kind of overly did this for no reason whatsoever. And then lava, even though it didn't get hit, I didn't really know that. I know that now, but yeah, I didn't know. So I added this little thing, even though there's spawns over here, so this wouldn't do anything for them. And then ultimately, if they were fighting, this was my whole thing. This was my mega reinforcements, a bunch of broadsides, ill-placed with a freeze and flyer, and then dynamos surrounding an amp design that is basic at best. So yeah, that was that. Valley looks massive, looks like it should be dangerous, when the secret is I have nothing done properly, really. Most of the spawns and all of this gets broken. Yeah, this was just a mess. I have fire traps here that will never get walked on because there's no way to walk up here. And if they were to hit those fire traps, they'd have to go all the way up around and then kind of go backwards. Same as a gas trap, like right there. Like, what's that going to do? But yeah, that's kind of how I had Valley set up. I mean, we beat SSD 10 on it, but there was 2 of us fighting, so that's probably half of it. The real beef is up here. Once you get to these gas and freeze traps, because surprisingly that is a good strategy. But then I'm kind of ruining that by having the broadsides here instead of darts, because there's nothing for them to bounce off, really. They're just going to be firing and then dropping. So yeah, this was my whole Valley build. So all that big build is basically for this small little tunnel here. The rest is pretty much all just redundant stuff that would never get utilized. Like these drops right here that are too high in a weird spot. Yeah. Beach, some of it I was quite happy with, some of it not. I always kind of went through the tunneling. Not going through the tunneling was such a weird concept to me. I thought afterwards how cool it was, because I did the cycling over here, but I did it very weirdly. And I only did it for the one direction, and not even the one direction from both sides. I never even considered this spawn here, nor did I consider once they get down into the pit that they would walk around and come back up and around and go through the tunnel. So I have this recycling, and I'll show it to you. This was also built a bit before when there used to be like spawns over here, so a lot of this was kind of like a mix between old and new spawns when I was building for our SSD run afterwards. So there's a bit of a weird mixture of builds here that I didn't quite know what I was doing at the time. A lot of this gets broken at this stage, but here it is. And they get to this one path. So they walk up here, they go through this path, and then a lot of freeze and launchers, and then it gets into this where it's basically broadsides, freezes, and dynamos. If they get into here, we get some fire and electric fields, and then another broadside. But yeah, this whole pit I completely misutilized. I thought this was so clever. I now kind of realize the error of my ways. But yeah, this is definitely my humble beginnings of Twine. And this, yeah, lots of anti-airs just randomly placed everywhere. No idea what I was doing. And then ramp, kind of the last thing I'll just show. Again, gas traps, broadsides, freezes. I kind of stick with the formula once I find something that somewhat works, even if it's not the greatest. And that's especially what I was doing with these builds. And then just to show you, yeah, like gas traps and broadsides, they were my bank. Yeah. Alright, that's it for my video today. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this information is helpful. I say that, especially on this one, because I was basically showing what not to do and showing my old builds. But it's interesting to see where the game kind of sprouted from, especially when it comes to storm shields. The whole introduction to endurance is phenomenal. I really wish we had even more options with it, just to utilize, because it is one of the best things that this game has to offer for the end game player. And it's just kind of cool to see the different setups and where I came from. You know, we all start somewhere, and there's a lot of learning that takes place in this game. You just can't turn it on and run with it. And I think that's one of the cool things about it, aside from the leveling up, is there's so much to learn, so many different ways to play, and just that variety and flexibility makes this one of the best games out there. So I'm looking forward to kind of what's next. I'm looking forward to helping my son, you know, level up his account now and doing a few videos with that. I'm still going to be doing endurance videos and loadout videos, even some weapon videos probably coming up here, and just really just exploring what this game has to offer and sharing what I've discovered with the community. Trying to do my part to kind of give a little bit back, even if I might not be the best at it. So thank you again for your time. Have yourself a great day, and I'll catch you around.